I want you to meet my friend Craig Parsons. He is a guy who has made it work. He started in real estate when he was 9 years old. Yeah, I know. I said we weren't going to be that kind of podcast, but here it is. Actually, Craig is a great guy, and he worked in real estate for decades, but didn't invest in real estate till about 5 years ago. And when he got started, wow, things happened. Yeah, the good things and some of the bad things. And he's going to share everything from ceilings falling in to drive-by shootings to pipes freezing up and all the things in between, and how he kept a positive mindset to make it all the way through. Join us on the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast as we talk to Craig Parsons, and he shares our story, telling the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, where we tell you the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm Kristi Kandel. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach people how to become the local developer in their community. Today, I'm joined with my co-host, Erik.
Hey, I'm Erik Stenbakken, and I've been a real estate investor since 2010. Long-term rentals and short-term rentals is my primary thing right now. And today, we are joined by a mutual friend. Both Kristi and I know Craig, and well, when we launched this podcast, we thought Craig's got to be on it. He's a guy who tells it straight. He's been in construction, I think, since you were 9 years old, Craig?
Yes, I was 9 years old. I mean, I don't know if I was being babysat, but I'd be with my grandfather on construction sites cleaning up sheetrock and scrapping out houses and stuff. So I don't know how much work we got done, but we were definitely out there working, doing something.
That's awesome. I remember picking up nails at my grandfather's new build and picking stuff up. And you got me beat, though. You started a little bit before I did. And you've been doing, I love it that you're like a never too late kind of guy. Before this podcast started rolling, we were talking about about 12 or 14 mile ski back into a remote place. And that's the kind of thing Craig talks about. Tell me a little bit about one of your other backpacking dreams and goals, Craig.
Actually in a month, I have permits to hike from Mexico all the way to Canada on the Pacific Crest Trail. However, with things not always going right, that's not going to happen this year, but I think I'm still going to keep the permit because it's good for a year or good for all season. And then this summer, if things open up, I can hike at least the Sierras or any part of the PCT I want to. But definitely next year for sure, we're going to take the 6 months and hike the whole distance.
What's the longest that you've hiked before? So, I mean, that's clearly a very long trip. So what's your normal hiking?
We did the John Muir Trail back in 2020, which is 210 miles. And that's actually what got me started in real estate investing. Is I was out there hiking and I met this lady. She was a 28-year-old woman, but she's like 5 foot nothing and 90 pounds soaking wet. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but I'm 55 years old. She's a little girl. Anyway, we're talking and she's asking, well, what do you do a real hike? And I'm like, what do you mean a real hike? This is a real hike. She goes, no, like a one of the big trails. And I go, I don't know, I can't afford it. So anyway, long story short, a couple of months later, I hear her on a podcast. And it turns out that she flips houses for a living. And I'm like, that just hits my ego. It's like, wait, I've been in construction for 40 years. And this girl who's 20 something, who can't know anything more than I know is doing this. Why the heck am I not doing this? So then we went out, and that was in August. And in October, we bought our first flip, which we never flipped. We're keeping it as a rental just because we found out about burn and things like that, which makes more sense to me than just flipping houses and get rid of them.
Wait, you not only got motivated and pushed into real estate, but then you figured out a different strategy that you didn't know ahead of time. So you didn't know it all before you got started?
Okay, so yeah, exactly. So honestly, I've worked in construction. Worked on plenty of flips, but I never watched a flipping show. I never watched a TV real estate show before I bought this house. So I bought this house. I said, well, maybe I should watch some of these flipping shows on TV and see what goes on. So I'm watching a flip or flop show in Atlanta, and the guy's got a shirt on that says something. And anyway, long story short, I Googled the name on his shirt, and it gave me to Bigger Pockets, which led me to everything else. So I mean, I basically went into it. I mean, obviously I had construction knowledge, but no real estate business knowledge whatsoever.
Okay, I don't want listeners to miss that. You don't have to know everything before you get started. You can't know everything. You will not know everything. And if you wait until that point, you will be one of the folks who says, well, I coulda, shoulda, but I didn't. And that motivation is what got me into vacation rental properties, because I wanted something in the mountains. And like, I just got to do it, move forward, jump in. So what did you started with a single family house and you did a BRRRR. Real quick, what's a BRRRR?
Oh, that's when you buy it, you refurbish it, you rent it, you refinance it, and you repeat and do it again and again and again, theoretically. Which it's a lot of people say it's getting harder. I don't think so. If you find the right deals, you just got to, find the right deal, and they're there.
Yeah, finding a good real estate deal has always been hard. I guess that's the thing. The honest truth is it's always been hard, and you've always had to look, and there's always work involved. So Craig, what happened next? You got one. Did you stop at one?
Well, no, because then I'm listening to podcasts and stuff like that, and like, oh, I bought 20 houses in 2 months, and I'm 12 years old. Well, this is easy, right? So I was looking at another property so where I invest in Idaho, we're about 50 miles from the Oregon border, or Washington border, excuse me. I was looking at another property in Washington, and I asked my realtor, I said, hey, do you do Washington? She goes, no. And I go, well, darn it, well, find me a deal in Idaho then. And she goes, well, I have this place for sale that it's not really for sale right now because it's winter, but it's basically a pocket listing she had. And so basically I bought it off market. And when spring came around, I mean, this was like a month later, I bought it off market from her or from somebody on an owner finance deal. And I only put down, it was $85,000. He wanted me to put down 20%, but the well was kind of bad. And I told him, I said, well, I need to put a new well in this thing. So I'll give you $5,000 down and we'll do an owner carry for a year. And I got it for that. And then I spent the next 3 years rehabbing it with a few things going on here and there, but that one actually went relatively smooth.
All right. So when was the last time you heard somebody buying a property for $5,000 down? Before Craig just said that, before that just came out of his mouth, if I had seen that on Instagram, I'd say impossible. That doesn't happen. It's not real. But here it is. Craig did it. He found it, and he's working forward. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of your real estate journey.
Well, so from that, then again, I'm still listening to these podcasts, and I'm green, and I don't know any better. I mean, and it's, I think it's good not to know better, because what you don't know you can't do, you're going to do. If someone tells you can't do something, you might not do it. But if you don't know you can't do it, you're going to do it. So this is a side story. But when I was a kid, I was like 10 years old, and I had my erector set. I'm sure Erik remembers erector sets.
I do.
And I had 2 motors, and I knew that if you turn the motor backward, it made electricity. Like it would out it becomes a generator. So I hooked the 2 motors together, and I'm trying to make a perpetual motion machine, but I didn't know it couldn't happen, but I'm still trying to do it. Right. So I was all bummed out because I couldn't get it to work. And then someone came and, that won't work. I'm like, okay. But all it took was that 0.2 of a second for someone to say that won't work. And it changed my whole outlook on things. And just because someone says things won't work, the point is, because someone says something won't work doesn't mean it won't work.
Right. It just often means they haven't done it.
The power of negativity is so bad when someone tells you no. And you talked about that in one of your other podcasts about this. You're scared of no, but I think it's bad in your psyche. I mean, it's not going to hurt you.
That's a very true point. I was just mentoring someone the other day who's starting her first company. She's the first one in her family to do it. And granted, this is a long shot of what she's trying to do. But I remember back to my mentors when I first got into development, and they said, you know what? You don't know what you don't know. And that's actually a good thing. Go do that, because they knew I was going to try and find a way to make it work that they quite frankly didn't have the energy and didn't want to do, but they knew there could be a chance. So yeah, just like you said, hey, the minute they said it doesn't work, I stopped. Sometimes what you don't know is what can propel you to find new things and invent new things and create new ways of doing things. So it's not always bad.
Okay, so you're into residential, and you're working on stuff like that. Did you stay in residential?
Well, no. So I'm in my town in Idaho, and we're just walking downtown one day, and this guy's got a store, and it's like a natural candle shop and vitamins and stuff like that, And turns out he's a realtor also, because in Idaho, real estate. I mean, when you're buying a house for $85,000, there's not a lot of money for real estate agents, so they do it on the side. Anyway, I just give him the flippant comment, "Hey, I'm looking for places. If you ever know anything, let me know." So 2 days later, I walk in there. He's like, "Hey, I got a great idea for you. There's this building downtown here. It's it's an old Sears building. It has 5 apartments upstairs and real estate downstairs, and it'd make a great Airbnb." And I'm like, okay. I mean, and the point here is a realtor, you showed me the property and you told me how I was going to make money with it, right in the same sentence, basically, which is important for realtors. I mean, for somebody who's trying to sell somebody something, it's like, don't just try to sell it to them. Tell them how they're going to make money with it also. So anyway, we go and look at it, and I'm not sold on the Airbnb idea, but I'm looking at the 5 apartments, and I know what they're going to rent for. And the commercial space is just a wide open 3,000 square foot area that can be, developed into other things. So I'm like, cool, okay. The lady wants 270,000 for it. It's been on the market for 2 years, and I have no money because I just spent all my money on my $5,000 on my other place plus the rehab cost. So I'm like, okay, how do we do this? Okay, I'm going to let's see a show owner finance. Okay, great. Show owner finance, she wants 20% down. So we need 50 grand. I'm like, okay, how do I get 50 grand? Well, again, I negotiated myself down to like $35,000 down. And I knew a guy who just sold a business and had a bunch of money. And he gave me a $50,000 private money lending deal for the down payment. So now I bought this thing. I paid her $35,000. I kept $15,000 for myself to put into it. So basically I got money back when we closed. So everything's great. This is awesome, right? And this is where the story starts.
All right. Before we jump into that story, I want to just mention really quick. Craig got a private money loan for the down payment. And the reason that worked, your ears might have gone like, what? I didn't think you could do that. I didn't think that was legal. Remember, he's doing this seller financing. Okay. And when you do seller financing, as long as the seller and the buyer agree, you can have any terms you want to. You can say, I want to buy this with 10 tons of M&Ms. And if the seller agrees to it, you can pay for it with chocolate candy, right? So this is an important thing I wouldn't want you to miss. But also, it's negotiable. Craig is negotiating these things, right? There's the asking price and there's the getting price. And you will never get some kind of special deal unless you ask for a special deal. Now, they can say no, and no is psychologically painful sometimes, but it can be financially rewarding if you're willing to take that risk to hear a no and to think about all the different ways that you can make a thing work like this. You can say, well, I could do a lease back, for a certain period of time, or you could say, I need you to, instead of lowering the price, I want you to do this work for me. It's negotiating. Okay, so Craig is in the door. He's got this thing working, but you said, and this is where the story starts. So I think this is where you need to take us away here, Craig.
So when I went to the lady, I figured out what she was making a month in profit, and because she owned it free and clear, and I figured, okay, I'm gonna make a deal where I'm gonna make her payments. She's gonna make $100 a month more than she's making right now, and that's how we got that. So I'm basically upside down $100, $200 a month, which I'm totally cool with. I mean, I can afford that for the rest of my life if I have to. I mean, it's not good investment, but just getting my foot in the door. So the idea with this property was I was just going to hold it, not do a thing, finish my duplex, refinance that, get the money to pay to rehab this building. Well, we closed like somewhere in the middle of November. We go up there for Thanksgiving. I take my brother and sister-in-law. I go get the keys from the realtor. My sister-in-law knows about this. My brother-in-law doesn't know about this. And they're good people. I'm just trying to show off a little bit and brag a little bit, right? Surprise him. We open up the front door. I walk in and I hear squish, squish. The floor is flooded. I'm like, oh, great. And I'm all proud of myself, right? And I'm walking into a flood. So, okay, what's going on? So a little story, short study. We figured out that one of the water heaters upstairs gave up the ghost. They're old and it's rusted out. So, okay, no problem. On this other property I got a water heater sitting here brand new, not being used. So we go and put the water heater in, hook it up. An hour later, we're done. It's a little bit of water damage, but it's carpet. It's commercial grade carpet, not a big deal. We kind of squeegeed it out and let it go. I'm gonna remodel anyhow, so I'm not that worried about the carpet. Come home. It's the weekend before Christmas now. I get a call from the property manager, and we have five. It's all fully occupied. The tenants upstairs. Downstairs, there's nothing. We just kept the tenants as they were. We didn't raise the rent. We didn't. I mean, we might have. We told them we were going to raise it in 6 months or something like that. But we didn't want to bother. We didn't want to. The lady that owned it liked her tenant. She's a good lady. She had a good relationship with them. So we don't want to come in being these people from California that had come in and raise my rent and everything. Anyway, I get a call from the property manager. Or actually, I get a call from one of the tenants that says, hey, one of the windows downstairs is broken. And these are big 6x6 plate glass windows in a storefront. Just picture a storefront window, right? I'm like, So a little investigation later, and there's 6 windows out front and 4 of them are broken. And what had happened is some kids have been going around shooting out windows on a Saturday night or Friday night or something like that. They got me, they got a Subway store, they got another thing. So this is an inconvenience. It's not really a setback. It's only hurting the downstairs. It really isn't hurting me. It's just kind of, it's cold here, so it's going to let the cold weather in. So it's not a big deal, but it's a problem. My property manager calls someone to fix it. Now, granted, it's the weekend before Christmas. He wants $600 to go put plywood up. And I'm like, man, that seems like a lot of money. So I called one of my son's friends who's 18. I said, go to the lumberyard, buy 4 sheets of plywood or whatever it was. And basically, within an hour and a half of me calling him, it was patched. And he had bought plywood at $20 a sheet. I mean, this was before things got crazy with COVID or whatever. So it wasn't. Anyway, it cost me like $200, and it was done in an hour and a half. I didn't have to pay $600. So this is another point that there's different ways there's different solutions to every problem. So okay, that's fixed. Now I think this was like on Saturday. On Tuesday, I get another call from the property manager. One of the water heaters went out. Okay, great. But what happened was it had gone out. The other one, I don't know if it was just I just got it at the right time. This one sat. It's hot water. I guess it's been leaking for a few days. Anyway, now there's mold everywhere. The bottom's all flooded. The ceiling tiles are shot. The lady's bathroom is shot. It's all flooded, moldy, getting moldy. So I don't know how long it was leaking for or whatever. But now, and I hadn't really been in these units that often, so there could have been mold from before. I don't know. But either way, now it's a problem. So that turned out to be, after going back and forth with the insurance company, the first off, they wanted to give me like $10,000 or $15,000 for it. And I'm talking to my friend who's a commercial insurance adjuster. He basically goes to like Hurricane Ian, and he does all the what do you call that when they the underwrite, not the underwriting, but yeah, he processes all the claims and figures out what it's worth. I said, hey, what's this thing worth? And he goes, well, send me some pictures, send me a floor plan. He does it all, and we're talking. And he goes, those tiles on the ceiling, he goes, how big are they? I go, I think they're like 16 by 12. He goes, yeah, those aren't standard. You're not getting those anymore. So you got to get all new tiles. So, long story short, he wrote it up, and it comes out to $40,000. And I said, man, is this right? He goes, I can do more if you want. He goes, this is just what I'm doing at any house. He goes, I'm not trying to do any favors. So we had to go back and forth. But the point was, I got a private adjuster, that's the word I was looking for, to look at it. And I got 35 from the insurance company instead of 15,000.
Okay, a lot of lessons in that. There's a lot. And the one that should be super obvious here is that just because you're offered something like an insurance settlement here from your people who are supposed to be working for you, doesn't mean you have to take that. Okay? It doesn't mean that they're the enemy, but it also means you don't have to just take what's given to you. And you have to ask a lot of questions. I had a background in journalism, and that was a couple careers ago. But I learned to ask questions, ask a lot of questions. And one of the most important questions is, well, then what? Right? Or if this, then what? It's your second order consequences. It's like, okay, a water heater goes out. All right, maybe that's $1,800, $2,400 installed, maybe. Okay. But what if, so you can ask, well, what else could go wrong? Well, I guess it could have leaked. Oh, and if it leaks, then what could go wrong? Well, could go into the floor. All right, well, I got an occupied space where in this case it was empty, but it's habitable, right? Down below, what could happen there? Well, I guess it could ruin the ceiling. Well, what if it goes through there? Well, then it could drip on the floor, right? So you've got to unpack these things because it ends up being dollars. And I want to emphasize this. If you have single family renters, commercial, it doesn't matter. If you have real estate of any kind, water is probably enemy number one. Water can destroy things faster than anything else. And it just seems so innocuous to people. Like, oh yeah, there's been a drip here for what? For more than 5 minutes? You got to tell me about this. It's a big deal. Okay, so Craig, you've got the place. It's got some water damage. You negotiated with your commercial insurance. How did that get fixed? What did that process look like?
Again, I'm just negotiating. I just need the money. I had to go up, and I drove up there. I fixed the upstairs, the apartment, the bathroom. I cleaned it all up, re-sheetrocked the walls where they were bad. Took us 3 or 4 days to do it. My son and I. It wasn't a big deal. And again, I just want to let this building go as is to go finish my duplex because I'm doing all this myself. And the reason I do it myself is I'm one of those people that thinks no one else can do it right. And B, the cost, I can still do it myself way cheaper than these other guys do it. Now, I'm not making $10,000 an hour, but I can still do it way cheaper than any contractor is going to charge me for it. And for me, I enjoy it too. So why not do it? I mean, if I hated it, pay someone else, that's great, but I enjoy it. So then now I think it comes about February, my property manager calls me and says, hey, I got someone who wants to rent you downstairs. And I'm like, woohoo, great. I'm going to be rich now, right? I wasn't even planning, and they're coming to me. And we knew we were going to have to do some improvements because there was nothing down there. So I go, I talk to her, we work out a price, a layout, and everything else out. And basically all I got to do is build two walls and put in some power and some lights. Well, and I'm just going to do this. This is Idaho. Like when my duplex, I called the building inspector. I says, hey, this is what I want to do. And he goes, why are you calling me? It's just a remodel. As long as you don't do any structural, I don't care. So I'm thinking the same thing downtown. I'm just building a what do you call it, a tenant wall, in between. I'm going to put in some plugs and a few lights. It's not a big deal. Well, she goes to the city to get a permit for her business, and like, oh no, we need to see the building permit for your building. And I'm like, okay, that's not a problem. We'll do it. My wife works as a civil engineer, and she's got the CAD program. So she draws up a little plan. The guy's like, oh, this is great, no problem. But where's your electrical permit? And he goes, who's doing your electrical? I'm doing your electrical. He goes, you can't do your electrical. And I said, why not? I own the building. He says, well, no, it's a commercial building. You can't do your own electrical on a commercial building.
So explain that a little bit. Why that was a bit of a like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, on a residential house, on your own house, you can do whatever you want. In Idaho, I don't know how it is in other states. You can do whatever you want. And even in my duplexes, when I first bought it, it was on an owner finance. But then when I refinanced it, I did it as if I was living there because I live in California and Idaho both. And it was legitimately my residence in Idaho. So I owned it, and it's not even commercial. But when it becomes a commercial building, I think for liability reasons, and since you have other people involved, they want to make sure the work's done by a licensed contractor and what have you.
That's exactly it. It's basically an owner builder permit to where they say, look, if you're living in this structure, then you are the one who is going to have the repercussions if your work is crappy. So basically, you can pull an owner builder permit, do your own stuff. We'll sign off on it, so they'll still inspect it. In some places they say you don't need a permit at all. But when you switch over to commercial, they go, hold on, you're not living in this structure. You're not operating a business. We are the extra double check to help make sure the safety of the tenants of the commercial space in the apartments.
Exactly. So I call an electrician. He doesn't give me a price. I come in and walk, nice guy. We talk for a half an hour. Never hear from him. I call another electrician. Yeah, we need $12,000 for that. And I'm like, what? My whole budget for this thing's like $5,000, not, for everything. Yeah, well, that's what it costs. Okay, well, what if I do some of the pre-work, like just to get things ready, drill the holes in the studs. Oh, no, we got to do it all. You can't do anything. And I'm like, okay, that's BS. I can drill a hole in a stud. As long as you hook up the wires and run the wires, it's fine. So finally, I got another electrician who would work with me, and he charged me $5,000, which basically doubled my budget for the whole project. But it's done. Now, the funny thing is, he put up a new meter box and a mast, and the mast he put up actually fell over in a storm. And I'm like, geez, I just hired a professional to do this. And it didn't fall over, but it kind of came off the wall. And I'm like, I'm glad I hired that professional to do this, So anyway, but this is something I didn't know. Now I know. And, the electricals, obviously, I can put that in the budget. But not knowing what you don't know there in that case really kind of hurt me as far as it wouldn't have changed any things. I still would have done the project. I just would have figured more money for it.
All right. So help us see a couple questions here. Mindset questions. How did you face just the challenges that were coming up? These unexpected problems, like, oh yeah, by the way, there was some kids cruising around town. They shot out a bunch of windows, which in turn caused some freezing, and in turn caused some other. How do you keep your mindset around there? Because it is easy to just think, this sucks so bad, I quit. This is awful. I'm out. I thought this. And I saw somebody's TikTok videos, and I thought this was supposed to be easy. So how did you keep your head together and an attitude of you're going to take care of this?
Well, for me, it's a simple thing. I just say, you know what? If it was really easy, everybody would be doing it. And you're not going to get ahead in life unless you're doing something a little bit harder than somebody else. That's, to me, point blank. It's that simple. It's like, to me, the more challenges that happen, I kind of get excited almost like, because that's why we're doing it. And I can do this because other people won't do this. The whole thing about I will do today what others won't do so I can live a life others won't live. That's just my mindset. It's for me, it's cut and dry, and I hate to be boring like that, but it's that simple.
So you said going into this, you had just already told yourself this could be hard. And if it is hard, that's a good thing because it separates, the wheat from the chaff here. It's like you get to press on and be successful. Where do you think you learned that?
My family, it's just the way growing up. It's like you just figure out a way to get it done. I mean, and that's what I mean, improvise, adapt, and overcome. I mean, that's my favorite line from the movie ever. It's just the way you're raised. It's just the way we're raised. I mean, we've been, I'm the 6th generation house painting contractor in my family, or 7th, I get lost. But, so growing up in that world, it's like, okay, you got a problem. You figure it out. I mean, you have no choice. You sign a contract, do a job, and you got to do the job now. And I don't understand. Like, I know some of the problems you've had, Erik. I don't understand how those happen because I do what I say I'm going to do. And these guys, I just don't get people that don't do what they say they're going to do. You don't sign your name on a contract saying, I'm going to build you a house and then build you a piece of junk. I don't understand that at all. And I know it's going to bite me somewhere along the line, but I don't get it. So.
Yeah, I remember my first freelance photography job. I had just quit my first and only W-2 job. And I went back and I said, hey, I'll photograph for you all and, do this as a freelancer for you, my former employer. And they said, okay, cool. Well, the next issue of the magazine is about the future. Can you photograph the future for the cover of our magazine? I was like, oh yeah, sure. No problem. You're going to pay me? No problem. And I walked out of that office. I'm like, how am I going to photograph the future? Right? I guess that's like, how is that supposed to work? But I was like, well, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to figure it out. And I ended up doing some crazy stuff. It was underwater with a model and clocks, and it was a crazy thing, right? But I did it because I had said yes, I was going to do that. And Craig, do you think that's a thing that can be learned? Like, or you can grow into it, like strength, like you can learn to ski or learn to ride a bicycle, or is it just like you have it or you don't?
No, I think anybody can. You have to believe. I think you can learn belief. I mean, it's just like, what was I doing with something with my brother the other day? We were trying to tighten a nut, and I knew the nut needed to be tightened, and he didn't know the nut needed to be tightened, so he wasn't really trying that hard. And not that he wasn't trying to get it done. He's just like, oh no, it's not working. I go, yeah, it works. Just do it. But I believed, and I knew it could happen, right? And he didn't believe, and he didn't know it could happen, so he kind of gave up. So it's all about belief. It's even look at going back to saying you're going to do something when you have no clue. Look at Bill Gates and Microsoft when they made the first operating system for the first PCs. He didn't have it. He didn't know what he was doing, but he knew a guy who had it. You know what I mean? And he went and bought it from the guy, but he still signed a contract not having anything in his hand, but he believed he could do it.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases is titled Marie Forleo's book, Everything is Figure-outable. And I just love that. She said she came home from school one day and saw her mom on the roof of her house. And she's like, what are you doing up there? She's like, well, I'm fixing the roof. She's like, well, my mom doesn't know anything about roofs. And I asked her, how can you know what to do about a roof? You're not a roofer. She's like, you know what? Human beings do this. If another human being can do this, I can figure out how to do this. I'm going to figure out how to do it, and I'm going to get it done. And from that, she took this, everything is figure-outable. And I want to underline what Craig said. It's belief. It starts with belief. Because if you believe that you can replace a water heater, put up drywall, do whatever, then you'll look into the resources to get it done. You'll figure it out. If you don't believe it's possible, you won't get it done. Alternately, you'll be writing a lot of very big checks to people who say they will solve the problem because even they might not know how, but they're like, hey, you write me a check big enough and I'll figure it out. So that's all. How's that property now, Craig?
Well, so there's still a little bit more that went on. The property now is doing great as far as income and rents. I mean, I pretty much I took the income from nothing to $4,000 a month for myself. So, I mean, that's great. So we got about 99% away with this first tenant's thing, and one of the tenants upstairs decides to take a bath, and she has hearing aids. She takes her hearing aids out, lays down and falls asleep on the couch and overflows the tub. So now my brand new drywall is all falling down. Not the drywall's falling down, but the taping's falling off in the water. So I had to dry that out, go back to scratch with the drywall and fix it. It wasn't a big deal. We weren't finished. I hadn't painted it yet, so it wasn't like, the end of the world, but it just one more thing that can go wrong when you have a 2-story building on water. And that's, I think, something that people need to know. No matter what it is, you need to say, how is this water, like you said, what happens next? So now the water heaters are in big tubs, and I made extra big tubs, not a pan, extra tall with good drain. So if they overflow, hopefully it doesn't go into the house. So I'm trying to mitigate anything. The tub, there's not a lot I can do about. I don't really know how it happened. It's got an overflow. It seems to work, but things happen. I mean,
I've had so many tubs at so many properties overflow, and then the ceiling's leaking. And yeah, it turns out normally it's just user error. Someone uses a bath, overflows it, water gets down, eventually comes down through the ceiling. But yeah.
So, water finds a way.
So 2 years into this, in the meantime, I got my duplex going. I had a 1-year contract on that duplex, the first building I bought with the owner, Carrie, and it's coming due. So I call the banks. Oh, yeah, we can do this. No problem. I fill out the loan, we're in the paperwork, and she goes, well, you need to send me some pictures. I sent her some pictures, and I told her going into it, I said, this thing's half done. One side's done, one side's not done, but it's half done. Maybe we can get some money for it. Oh, yeah, no problem. I sent her pictures. She goes, oh, no, that won't work. You don't have any floors. You don't have electrical outlets. And this is on the side that I told her wasn't done. Anyway, she didn't understand what I told her, whatever, so we can't get you a loan. So I'm like, great. Okay. So my brother-in-law, the one who I was telling you about, they had a home equity line. They're like, hey, you know what? It's only $50,000. We'll loan you the money. You pay it off. And then in the meantime, I got another loan from the bank, and I got it worked out. But my brother-in-law, they wanted to invest. And then like 6 months later, they say, hey, I need that money back. And I'm like, well, we invested it. It's not, it doesn't work like that. But it's your brother-in-law. You don't want bad things in the family. So I had the other side of the duplex all done. It's all cherry. I refinance it, not a problem. I pay him off the money. And then now I go to refinance this commercial building. And so at year 2, I have a 3-year note with her. At year 2, I try to refinance it. Like, well, you don't make enough money. And the building doesn't make enough money. And I'm like, and they tell me, like, you need to file your taxes different. And they kind of give me a wink, like, you need to file your taxes different. I'm like, okay. And this is from 2 bankers. I'm like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, and I'm self-employed, so I keep a very sharp pencil when it comes to taxes, and I take every deduction I possibly can. I go, I'm going to actually rent part of this building to myself for storage, which is a legitimate expense. I talked to accountants, I cleared on the IRS, so I increased the revenue of the building by $1,000 a month because I'm trying to get a DSCR loan, right? I want as much money as I can from this building. I increased it $1,000. I got all maxed out the rents. All downstairs is rented out now, so it's a complete project, right? And so now it's this year in June, I go back to the bank again, and I owe the lady in November. So I'm like, I got 5 months here. I got plenty of time, right? Well, it's one thing after another. I get to bank after bank who says, well, your project, we don't like mixed use and we don't do rural. So I've just knocked out like 95% of all lenders. So finally I get a local credit union, and they say, yeah, we can do this. And I do it. I send them my income. I send them the building's income. And I'm looking at a DSCR loan, which means it's based on the property, not my personal income. Well, they're like, yeah, we don't do it like that. We'll take the property's income, but your income has to help pay for it too, or something like that. I'm like, okay, well, I covered this because I make plenty of money now. I increased my taxes. Well, when I refinanced that duplex, when I was under the gun to refinance that duplex to pay off my brother-in-law, I basically went from a $700 a month payment to a $1,700 a month payment. And the rent increased by 16. We rent each side for $1,600. So I'm like, on the balance sheet, it all works out. I'm actually making more money than I was before. However, the bank said, no, you're paying $1,700 a month and you're only making $1,600 a month because they're going off my last year's income statements on the building. They're not giving me credit, but now it's rented out because I don't have 2 years of rent returns for it. So, but they're penalizing me for the new loan that the last year of my loan was $700. Now it's $1,700. So long story short, this building, I cannot refinance this thing. And I owe this lady, and I call her in November and I said, hey, we're trying to get this, we're close. And I'm still working with this one bank. I'm down in Florida helping another friend. We're talking to him on the phone. Yeah, this is going to go through. And the last minute, he says, no, we can't do this. And of course, not to make a sob story, but my father, when I'm in Florida, he's very old and getting ready to pass away. He goes in the hospital. I'm having a meeting in the hospital about my father's care. And this guy calls and says, dude, we can't get your loan. So that's when life gets kind of hard, right? You're dealing with your father and you get shut down. It's like everybody's just trying to knock you down.
So you quit then. You gave up. You said, this is too much. Life is too hard.
I told the lady, I said, you know what, screw you. You help me out. I'm just going to you take the building, you deal with it. I'm done with you. No. So I'm going and I'm like, so now I'm just trying to find hard money lenders, anything I can get in a short time. I call a guy in Boise, Idaho. Oh yeah, we can do this. And I'm just looking for just a year to kick the can down the road, right? So I can get my tax redone. I have the income from my duplex. He goes, oh yeah, we can do this. And he goes, send me some pictures. I send him some pictures. And he goes, no, we can't do this. He goes, it's kind of too rural for us, even though we said we could do it. And he goes, and your tenants, you have month-to-month leases. And I mean, these tenants have been here, one guy's been there for 6 or 7 years. All the other ones have been there over a year. He's like, you have month-to-month leases and your tenants downstairs suck. Or he says, you have poor quality tenants, and I turn it into they suck. And I'm like, well, this is rural Idaho. I'm not going to get a Starbucks. I'm not getting a Bank of America in there. You know, why are my tenants poor quality? The lady's been there for 3 years, never paid a day late. The other business that I moved in, it's a quilting shop. They run another building for 15 years, never missed a payment. And the only reason they moved was that building got bought and sold out from underneath them. So I'm like, why am I? But again, you're not going to argue with these guys, these loan brokers. You can kind of state your case, but argue with them. So finally, I found a place out of Florida. They want 4 points, 15% year interest per year, but it's interest only, so that saves a little bit, right? And if it goes past a year, it's 2 more points, and now it's 16% interest.
Wow.
So this is where I got lucky. I'm moaning to my cousin who he did well for himself. He doesn't have that much money, but he has it all invested, paying off on dividend stocks. He goes, hey, I'm getting 5% on this. He goes, I'll give it to you for 6 or 7%. I'm like, no, let's make it fair. And then he gets a little greedy and he get 9. But basically, he gave me a loan for the whole thing. Well, no, he gave me a loan. I owed $238,000. He gave me a loan for $200,000 and 9% interest only forever. Basically, he doesn't need. He wants the income, right? He doesn't want the money. So it's a little bad terms for me, but to get out of my situation, it was great. And then I had to come up with $38,000 cash of my own. And literally, we're counting our quarters to come up with this $38,000 right at Christmas time to pay off this loan. So again, it goes hard. And I swear to God, we're counting our quarters to make up the rest of this money because I spent all this. I spent all the money on my duplex. I didn't get it refinanced for as much as I wanted to because I kind of had to do it on the gun. But it's in the end, it's all taken care of. It's not perfect, but it works.
I want to go back to the private money loan. What do you think gave him the confidence to give you a couple $100,000? Because that's not chump change. So what do you think it was about you, the deal that you've done that allowed him to feel that comfort level?
And this is a hard thing for me because it's my family. And we grew up working together and everything. And he knows me, and he knows that maybe when I was 25, 30 years old, I was very irresponsible with money. I mean, to me, making money has always been easy. So you just spend it because you can get more tomorrow, right? But he's seen the building. He'd helped me with the building now and then. He lives in the town. I don't live in that. I mean, I work in California and I invest in Idaho. Even though I live there, I don't live there. He's seen the property. He knows what it is. He knew the value of it. He knew the income. He knows the renters. So he had a very firm understanding of what was going on. And I had been telling him about the process the whole way along, right? And this is where I don't really like to put a lot of stuff on Instagram, and I don't like to boast of my achievements necessarily, but I wasn't doing that with him. I was kind of just like, hey, this is what I'm doing today, come and visit or whatever. I was never trying to sell him on anything. So anyway, he had confidence the building was going to be fine and make plenty of money.
He was a local who knew the market. He knew you. He had a deep history. You shared your story along the way, not to get money out of him, not to anything, but you shared your story. And one day he's like, hey, I want to play in this game too. And he wasn't trying to steal the deal from you because his What he wanted to do was he had extra money. He didn't have the extra time. He didn't have the skill set to do the building. He was that person who could bring the money into a deal. And so many times I talk to people in real estate investing and development where they go, why would anyone want to give me $100,000, $200,000 to do this deal? Why wouldn't they do it themselves? And this is a very key point, that this is one of the reasons why they wouldn't. They don't want to deal with these water heaters and mold and tenants and electricians and permits, but they do follow what you're doing. And if they believe in you, they're willing to take that educated risk to invest with you and try it out.
Right. I also want to point out that in Craig's journey here, that the no means no, not today, or it means no, we don't do that. Maybe somebody else will. Maybe that's a different lender. Maybe it's a different location. Maybe that's different terms. When I started in real estate, I thought you go to Wells Fargo, and if they tell you no, then that means it's impossible. And it turns out that's not true. That just means that doesn't fit Wells Fargo's easy peasy, all the, square peg, square hole, we're good. That when it comes to making money and making deals, as long as both parties agree on the terms, you can make it work. And Craig's persistence in looking at different things makes a big deal. And he mentioned DSCR, that's a debt service coverage ratio, and that goes into how much a place makes. And they will look at things like your DTI, your debt to income ratio. And that's a really crazy thing, because if you're trying to borrow $300,000, you can actually move the needle from a no to a yes by paying something off, theoretically, like a car. You pay your $5,000, and now your debt payment per month goes down enough for you to borrow $300,000. Right? So there's some crazy stuff like that when it comes to finance and understanding how that works. The more homework you do about how these various things work can make a huge difference. And that's just, you can get there by asking a lot of questions. Like, well, what if I paid this off? Well, what if this didn't exist? Well, what if, like in Craig's case, they said, well, if your taxes looked a little bit different, did it change how much money is passing through his pocket, renting it from himself to himself? No. But on paper, yes, it might have increased the income on that property by 20%, which could put them in like, oh, sure. And then there was something else that popped up. But my point is this, is that there's a lot of levers when it comes to getting financing. And the more you understand those levers and who has those levers, in other words, like a local bank may have a committee that meets together. And as long as those 5 people agree that you're a good credit risk, they only have to have one lever. That's it. And other banks have more and different ones. So don't take the first no or we can't do that as the final word.
And one other thing, I want people to know too, is that I have these private lenders, and both of them, it didn't go bad, but it took longer than I expected. So if you do a private deal, you need to have contingencies. So, okay, what happens in 2 years if I don't have the money? What are we going to do? Because this lady was very gracious and helped me out. And she could have been like, no, I'm taking it back tomorrow. So you need to build those contingencies into your stuff that I didn't do, not knowing what I didn't know.
No, but here you are. And if we each had $1 for every time a real estate deal in the world took longer than we thought, none of us would have to work again.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, thank you for joining us and sharing your journey and your working through the struggles and kind of the things that might have just shut other people down, and encouraging our listeners that you can figure this stuff out, that problems that you didn't know were going to happen, and you can figure ways out, and you keep asking. There's that persistence. You see that as a theme in what Craig was talking about? There's this persistence. It's like, well, that didn't work. I'll try the next thing. Well, that didn't work. I'll try the next thing. And that's what we want to do here at the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, is we want to tell you the good, bad, and the truth about real estate investing. And the truth is sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's hard work, and sometimes it's unexpected. But real estate, in this case, is the long game. And by being persistent, Craig won. Now, Craig, how can people kind of follow what you do post on social media if people want to get in touch with you?
You follow me on Facebook, Craig Parsons, or at the Hillbilly Investor on Instagram.
Let us know how those little underscores work with the Hillbilly Investor there.
_Hillbilly_Investor.
All right. We'll try to get that in the show notes so you can Connect with Craig if you want to. Craig, thanks so much for being our guest on the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast. The highest compliment you could pay us would be a great rating, and forward this to a friend who can learn from what Craig just shared with us. Thanks for joining us.